Okay, so Zok Tahelig Gemara, I'm going to go back to Vizai number base, just so that we could review the four shitas. So the Gemara says as follows: Shisha Tanal Shisha Lunadava Amar Chizkiya Keneged Shisha Bate Avos Hakayanim Shetiknu Lam Chachamim Sheishalom Zemzeh. It's so that there could be one day, one pushka designated for each day, so each base av will know that whatever is in that pushka is for us. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mitoich Shenadav Meruba Tiknul Shayvers Merubin Kadesh Lo Yisaf Shu Amois. There really is no reason to have six. They have six just because they want to hold the money in smaller containers. It will allow the currency to remain fresh. Uziri Amar Keneged. I wish they had a container that could protect the money from getting stale because of inflation. That they haven't invested. The caliph for that is an asset. Uziri Amar Keneged Par ve'egel Ayel ve'keves Gedi useir. So, as we learned yesterday,
there was no inflation then. You're dealing with gold and silver, not paper money.
You're not creating money, fake money.
What?
You're not creating fake money, so there can't be.
That's right. It's not paper that the government gives out. It's real gold, real silver.
That's right.
They use it now as a hedge for paper money.
If there is backing, if there is gold to actually back it.
Yeah.
Only Trump went to visit Fort Knox, he became very quiet afterwards. So Rashi told us, if you're misnad of a parla oila, you would bring the money and put it into a shofar sheshmai par. So if you had to donate a carbon, you would just place the money into the pushka that represented the par. So they'll know, the Kohanim will know that every mona has to pay for one par, and if someone wanted to give a egel, a calf, he would bring 5 sloim and would put it in the shevet shema egel. This way, they would know, the Kohanim would know. So for someone who's donating an oila, instead of having to speak to a person, you can go to, what are those automatic cashiers called? Self-checkout. They're able to go to a self-checkout. That's what that was for. And then you had Bar Pada said, I'm sorry, for Rebbe, and that will only be consistent with Rebbe, who else caught in Levigot Lo Yotza, because otherwise, no matter what you donated, you could put it into the oila box and they'll bring an oila. But the teretz is, you have to bedavka use what you asked for. Ubar Pada Amar, Keneged Aparim Va'elim, it's not referring to a standard carbon oila. It's made for either a chatas tzibur that was lost, and then we were makriv another carbon instead of it, and then we found the original one. So you liquidate the par that was redundant now, meaning you let it go to re'iyah, and then if it gets a mum, you sell it. So that would be the par. Elim, Rashi says, is referring to Asham Gezelois and Asham Elois, which are brought from Elim. So they're all going to be the Nedava, but even the Nedava has to be separated. Kavasim, Rashi told us, was for Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzayah. Seir, more like the Sirish Chaydesh, and then Moisher's everything else. But really, what you did with all of these was Yimachar, and their money went to the Me'olah for Ketzim Mizbeach. So the origin was different, but the destination was the same. And Vahama, which we said was an extra kolboin, if two people gave a shekel together, they had to give an extra kolboin, which would be a ma kasef, and instead of putting that into the shkolim box, that ma kasef went just to buy extra oilers for, there was another pushka for that. Zok to Gemara, out of these 4 pshatim, kulu kechizkiya lo amri. Why did the 3 Mandarim that argue on Chizkiya, why do they argue on him? What's wrong with his reason? They're not concerned, we're not concerned that the Kohanim are going to fight. The Chol Chad V'Chad Yoy Meikavid. Everybody does the Avodah on his day and accepts what he received on the day that he worked. As Rashi says, V'Mbolek Rabbanas Harbe, Shaloi Tzarech L'Shofer, Ein Laidita Klum Ba'irosh, Sheniktum Namoy, Shenitum B'Shofer. So if he had a good day, because on the day of his avoida, there were many nedavas, oilers that the kohanim got the oilers from. So big deal. The communal pot went to kohanim from a different day. It didn't bother the kohanim. Why didn't they say like Rabbi Yochanan, you needed 6 pushkas so that the money shouldn't go bad? Because lipushe loy chashinon. He wasn't concerned. What about Kizairi? Kizairi, who said that depending on what animal you need for an oila, you put it into a different pushka so that you should buy the right animal. That's because yichida lemukmi. That only works according to Rebbe. Because not according to Rebbe, you could put all the money into one pot and just buy parim by the biggest animal. And you say it covers for the smaller animals. But Rebbe was the only one who said that if you donated a smaller animal, you have to bring a smaller animal. And Mibal did not like Rebbe, they didn't want to say that the 6 pushkas were like Ziri. Because there's 2 problems. First of all, moisturous, kulinama moisturous. There was one more pushka for moisturous. All of the items, the purim, the elam, the kvasim are moisturous as well. That's number 1. The second problem is ma nami lishkola mosla. You don't put the ma into a separate pushka and use it to buy ketzim mizbech. It went into the taklin chatatin. It went into the main receptacle that were for the shkolim. Titania, lahechen kalben zeh heilig. This extra kalboin that has to be given by 2 people who gave 1 shekel together. What do they do with that money? It's up to Gemara. Heilig l'shkolim. It goes to the shkolim. Divir of Meir. Rabbi Eliezer Aimel Nedava. So you see, there's this machlokes. So these are the 4 shitas so far, and now Shmuel and Rabbi Oishia are introduced. Shmuel Omar keneged moiser chatos. One is keneged moiser chatos. So what does moiser chatos mean? Rashi says moiser chatos. There's moiser asham, and there's moiser asham etzayra. So Rashi says shehifresh mois leechad mikol elu. You set aside money for one of these karbanis. V'nitaishru, and they were extra because you thought the animal would cost $150, when in fact the animal only costed $100, so there's $50 extra. So that money, noiston l'shoifres, you put them into shoifres. The osham stam, when it says connected moisher chat, so moisher osham without a description is generally referring to asham gazela shuma ilois, and loy ma'ariv moisher didei by the chatas v'osham v'nozim etzayra. So you don't even mix the moistures together, even though it's all money, and you're bringing I believe, an oila with all of them, oilos nedava. Nevertheless, since the origin is different, they're separated and they're brought separately. So Shmuel Amar connected moisher chatas u'moisher asham u'moisher asham nazir u'moisher asham mitzayra u'moisher minchas chaytei u'moisher asir se'efa shel kohen gadol. What is a minchas chaytei and what is a asir se'efa shel kohen gadol? So Rashi says the minchas chaytei is someone who is bringing the dalas carbon of an oil v'yored. Hoil v'ikri chatos. The main point is it's called a chatos because this whole concept that if you have extra money from a carbon, you could just put it in the dava. That's a chiddush that only applies to a carbon that can be identified as a carbon chatos. It wouldn't apply to other types of carbonas, as we will soon see. So hoil v'ikri chatos ozul moishra lenidvas tzibur. That's the only reason why extra money that was dedicated for the carbon chatos, can you use that money for an oilas nedava? And this is the key. Zeh medrash dorish yahayada akain. This medrash from Yahayada Akain is the side of all this. Kol haba mimoiser chatos umimoiser osham. Any money that's left over from money that was designated to purchase a chatos or to purchase an osham, yilakach bahem oilos. You buy oilos nedava for ketzam mizbeach. Habasar l'Hashem ba'oris l'kahanim. Aval moiser mois shar menachos, but other menachos like a minchas machvas and marcheshes, meaning that wasn't brought because of an aveira, so couldn't be identified as a chatos. You would not put that in the tibur. Elahu Yosef mishaloi umevi mincha acheres. So if someone donated $50 for a mincha, and it turned out the provisions for the mincha costed $40. That $10 you don't just put to the nova. He has to add more money to that $10 and bring another mincha because that money has to stay dedicated for a mincha. What about Asir Seifa, which is the Chavite Kohen Gadol? Shal Kohen Gadol Shemaka v'chal yoyim v'yoyim. How is that a chatos? V'im hifresh mois l'Asir Seifa shal hayoyim v'nitaishu. The Kohen put away money, and it turns out that they were able to buy the flour for less. Shavein yachal atzarfan l'shem machar. You can't say, you know what, there's extra money, we'll use it for his chavitin for tomorrow. You don't do that. Elatipa l'nidvas tzibor. It's a mincha. Where's their chatos involved? Shigami nikras chatos. The mincha of the Asir Seifa, the minchas chavitin of the kohen, the Torah refers to as a chatos. Beperk ve'elu megalchin b'moed kotten. It says Yaakov chatasoi, and we darshan zu Asir Seifa shel kohen gadol. Okay, so therefore Shmuel lists off this list of karbonos. The moishers have to be kept separate. Kedeged moisher chatos, umoisher asham, umoisher asham nazir, umoisher asham mitzayra, umoisher minchas chayta, umoisher asir sevish al gadol. But the key is, the unifying factor is, the tzara shovash ben is that they are all somewhat identified with the word chatos. And this whole concept of repurposing money from a carbon to oilas nedava applies exclusively to a chatos. Rabbi Yosy Amar, it's keneged moisher chatos, umoisher asham, umoisher asham nazir, umoisher asham mitzayra. So up until this point, it's exactly like Shmuel, but here's where he changes. He adds in umoisher kinin, and he takes out umoisher asir seifa. So he holds that the extra money that a kohen gadol has for his chavitin does not go la'ila. But what is moisher kinin and moisher mechaschayta, which we had? What is moisher kinin? So for that, Rashi says, hamafrish mo'is lakinai. Someone owes a pair of birds, and he put money for it. V'nitaisru, and there's extra money mikinin from buying the kinin. He's allowed to. That money will go there, and that would go l'nadav. Okay, so Zok to Gemara. Ushmuel my timer loy omer Rabbi. Why didn't Shmuel say like Rabbi? The teretz is because Kinin tana loy reisha. In one of the, remember, there's a total of 13 pushkas. One of the 7 pushkas was already money that you put in when you're going to buy Kinin. So why do I need a second one for Kinin? Rabbi Shia, Tani, V'lai Tani Kinin? Are you telling me Rabbi Shia learns this brisa and he excludes Kinin? That's not true. In the first 7, V'tani Rabbi Shia, V'tani Kinin. So why do I need Kinin in the first 7 and another time Kinin for the last 6? So you have, out of the 13 pushkas, 2 of them are labeled Kinin. Zok to Gemara, Chad lekinin, v'chad lemoisha kinin. One was for kinin. If you have enough money for birds, you put it in there, and they buy birds with it. And we know that they made sure those birds were matter people to go to the Azara, if it was like for a year ledes. So the Kohanim knew that by the end of the day, all that money had to be spent, and all the birds that was represented by that money had to have been brought. And then there was another one where, if they realized that they set aside too much money, that went into Moshe Kin. In fact, the Gemara. Now, let's stop for a second. Why are we just looking at the relationship between Shmuel and Rabbi Shia? There's 4 other Tanoim. There's 4 other Meroim who had 4 other different Pshatim. Why didn't they say like Rabbi Shia? So Tosfos adds, "Who adin kol hani amiroi de la'il." Rabbi Shia, okay, who didn't call hani amiroi de la'il? All of the Amoraim that we quoted, Rabbi Yochanan, Chizkiah, and Barpada, they all also disagree with Rabbi Shia because of this reason. There's already Kinan. For Rabbi Shia, my time, Shmuel. So why did Rabbi Shia disagree with Shmuel? Why doesn't he like about the Asir Seifa of a kohen? Why isn't that a chatos? So you let it rot out because you cannot apply it to anything else. So if we look at Tosfos, what about everybody else? Why do they not hold like Shmuel? For Rabbi Shia, my time, Shmuel. The Bishlam Meroid Il Sarvi the Moshe Mincha Lav L'Nedava Atli. They hold that the extra of a mincha does not go to the Nidava. So why everybody argues on this group is because they might all hold that Moshe Mincha never goes l'nedava. But you see that these two Amiroim held, Shmuel and Rabbi held, they do go l'nedava. The question is which ones to pick. That's why there's a discussion over here. The Tanya we learned, Moshe Minchas Nedava. If you brought a Minchas Nedava and there was extra money, the halacha is Moiser Mincha Yirakiv. Now the wording simply doesn't make sense. Moiser Mincha Sedava, Moiser Mincha Yirakiv. What is exactly this bride saying? My Kamar. Amar Pchistia, let me explain, let me decipher what this means. Hachi Kamar. Moiser Minchas Chayte Nedava. Moiser Asiris Ha'efesh Gadol Yirakiv. If it's a Minchas Chayte, it's Takachatos. It's part of the Carbon Oil of Yerid series. So therefore, it fits under the umbrella of the limud from Yehoyada Koyin. That extra goes l'nedava, but the Moiser Asiris Evish Al Koyin, that's a nedava, and therefore it is Yerakiv. He disagrees with Shmuel that it's not Yerakiv. Rab Omar Afilu Moiser Asiris Evish Al Koyin Gadol Nami Nedava. He holds that the Moiser Asiris Evish Al Koyin does go to the Dava. Ella Moiser. So now we have a new shita besides Shmuel and Ravoshia. We now have a Rabbah as well, and Rabbah says Moiser Lachmei Toide Yerakiv. He holds the Moiser Asiris Evish Shal Koyin Gadol is l'Dava. Ella Moiser Lachmei Toide Yerakiv. But if you had leftover from Lachmei Toide, you put aside more money for Lachmei Toida that was necessary, that cannot be applied to anything else because Lachmei Toida is not a chatos. I agree that the Asiris Evish coin can be a chatos. I agree that Minchas Chayte is a chatos, but the Lachmei Toida is for sure not a chatos. Beplukta, it's a machlokes. Moiser Asiris Evish coin gadol. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nedava. Rabbi Elazar Omer Yerakiv. So you see this machlokes clearly as to whether or not the Asiris Sefer of the Kohen is the Minchas Chavitin. Can you call it a Chatos? Can you even identify that as a Chatos? Meisei Frektimar. Moiser Shkolim Chulin Umoiser Asiris Sefer Umoiser Kine Zovin the Kine Zavos the Kine Yoldos the Chatois Vashamois Moisreyan Nedava. So let's see. Moiser Shkolim Chulin. What if you had extra Shkolim? Then the halach is Chulin, because you don't have to give that at all. So that comes back to you. So Rashi's hitness Mois Merubin Lashkolim Vishaklon Vinitosh man if there's extra ones. So what happened was he took a lot of money and he put it into a pot that he was going to use for shkolim, and then when he makes them into his shkolim, he goes to the money changer to get the shekel. It turns out that he had too much money there, so that's his money. He gets to keep it. But a Moiser Asiris Ha'efa, which is going to be referred to the Chavitin, Umoiser Kine Zavin, Vikine Zavais. So if someone put extra money in to buy birds and there was excess funds, Vikine Yoldos, Vichatois Vashomis, that's almost Rein and Nadava because they're all like a Chatas. So it says Asiris Ha'efa, my love, Moiser Asiris Ha'efa, Shal Kohen Gadol. So you have a raya that the extra of a Chavitin is like a Chatos and it is L'Nadava. So you have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan, and you have a kasha on Rabbi Elazar who says Yerakev. So to Gemara Loi, you know what Moiser Asir Seifa means in this brisa? Loi Moiser Minchas Chayte. It's referring to the Minchas Chayte that everybody agrees that's considered Echatas. Amar Nachman Yitzchak, Mistavra command the Amar Moiser Asir Seifa Shal Kohen Yerakev. The logic is to say that the Asir Seifa of a Kohen is in fact not like a chatos, and therefore, if there's extra, it's left to become possible. The Tanya we learned, it says in reference to the Minchas Chayte, Lo Yosim Allah Shemen v'lo Yitin Ela Levina. What are the characteristics of a chatos if it does not have shemen nor does it have levina? Ki chatosi. Amar Rav Yehuda, he kruya chatos. Dafke the Minchas Chayte we consider a chatos and has the benefit of moisture of l'nedava, the eina cheres kruya chatos. But another mincha, which the pasuk is vaguely referencing does not have a status of a chatas. What is the pasuk referencing? Limid ala sira she'efel shel kohen gadol she'einer kruya chatas uta una levina. It does need levina. Umida einer kruya chatas moishra yirakev. Since it does not have the characteristics of a chatas, for instance, it has levina because the minchas chavit, the kohen gadol, was accompanied with levina, and the Torah is saying is excluding it from the heading of chatos. Therefore, if there's any extra from the Chira cave, then it wouldn't go to a pushka for sure to buy an oilus nadava. Okay, Gavaldik. So at the end of the day, we have 6 different pshatim as to what these 6 pushkas were for, and we have reasoning for each of them. As a byproduct, we've learned another halacha that the only time you say about a carbon moishus l'nadava is only if it's considered a chatos, and there was a discussion as to whether or not the chavit kohen gadol is considered a chatos. Zok the heilige Mishnah weiter. Shor ze oila v'nistav. Someone said harezu oila. He dedicated a specific shor as an oila, which means normally when you say harezu, you're not chayav achrius. If something happens to it, you don't have to fill it in with another one because you were not makabel it on yourself. You were just designating this person. Oila, it got him. So the law is, imrat, if you want, yavi b'damav shnayim. So the halacha is you got him. So therefore you sell it and you have someone buy it off. So what do you do with the money? You still want to bring a carbon chatas with it. So what you do with the money is you don't have to buy exact same carbon. What you could do is you could buy two smaller ones. What if someone said shnei shavarim elu oila v'nistavu, they got him? Again, it's the same svara because you never were makabel upon yourself to do anything. When you look at this animal, you can buy one animal with it. For Rabbi holds this will be also, and the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning. Ayol ze ayla v'nistav. What if you did the same thing with an ayol? Imratza yavi b'damav keves. If you want, you can bring a smaller animal. Kevef ze ayla v'nistav. Imratza yavi b'damav ayol. V'Rabbi Yosy. So this seems almost to be a repeat of the shar, and the big shar and the small shar. Let's see the Gemara. Dr. Heilige Gemara. Correct Gemara. Via Amrit Reisha. You said in the Reisha, Shar b'mana, ve'evi shnayim b'mana, lo yotza. Didn't we say in the previous Mishnah that if you said, I'm donating a Shar b'mana, and you brought 2 shavarim that add up to a mana, it was lo yotza. So how come over here you could take the money from one Shar and buy 2 shavarim with it? So Gemara, Shar zeh v'nistav shiny. Because there it was a case of a real lie. If you say a real lie, shar b'mana, then in order for you to fulfill your nether, you must bring a shar b'mana. But if you said a rezu, you weren't machayev yourself on anything at all. It's merely a question of what should you do with the money. So that's why it would be different, and you'd be able to buy 2. Zeh v'nistav shiny zok Rashi. The chivin number zeh akrivayla v'nistav ozal nidre. That's it. There's no more obligation upon him. The zelay motzi lemikrav. He can't be makrav this anymore. Sure, I'll bring this as an oil, but now that it has a mum, I can't. So that's it. My commitment is over. The obligation remains on his shoulders. Shnei shavarim elu oila v'nistavu rotza yavi b'demeim echad, but for Rabbi Yosy. Frank Gemara, my timer. Why would Rabbi Aser? Because he said he was going to bring 2. 2 is called Gadol, Rashi says, because there's a certain beauty in bringing a pair of animals versus a single animal. Now he's bringing one animal. One animal is not as big, it's not as grand as a carbon as 2 animals are. As Rashi says, Shebechol Mokim Shnayim Chashuvim Echad Vafilu Shneim Shavim. Zogt Gemara, the Afal Gav the Nistayef, even though they had a mum, lechatchila loy shari Rabbi. Rabbi said lechatchila you shouldn't do it. So for Rabbi Yosy is lechatchila, not b'diavad. He says lechatchila you should bring the same carbon that you oblige yourself to bring, which was 2 oxen instead of 1. Frank Gemara v'liflik nami bereisha. Why didn't Rabbi argue in the Reish as well, because if you look at our Mishnah, Rebbe only introduced his difference of opinion when you promised two and now you want to bring one instead. But when you promised one and you want to bring two, Rebbe didn't complain. Rebbe only complained when it was Shnei Shvarim and you brought one, but they really should be the same. What Rebbe should have complained there as well, should have argued, should have dissented there as well. Zok to Gemara, Velivlig Nami Bereisha. Zok to Gemara, in fact, Rebbe does argue in the Reisha as well. Rebbe Akula Milsapolig, but he doesn't interrupt the Tanakama. V'nota Lula Rabbanon Adamaski Milsayu. Once the Rabbanon finished their full memra, side 1 to 2 and side 2 to 1 is allowed, then Rebbe said his opinion, Teda, and I'll prove it to you that he argues in any scenario where you're changing from the original Nedava that was made. Because in the Sefer we have the same thing. So clearly, the second case was where you're downgrading, you're going from an ayil to a keves, or you're upgrading. Keves elo oilav nestayev ratzu yavi b'dvan ayil for Rebbe Yosy and Rebbe Asher there. So Shema we know clearly Rebbe Asher's any deviation from the original structure. So even though he didn't state his objection to the very first case in the Mishnah, the explanation is he wanted to wait till the Tanakama finished. Ibailu. Mimina lamina mai. We're discussing here in the Mishnah, you go from one oxen to two oxen, but what if you changed to a completely different type of animal? As Rashi says, Shor ze oila v'nistav maush yov b'damav shnei elam. Could you bring elam instead of the ox? It's a complete different species. Mai tashma shor ze oila v'nistav lo yavi b'damav ayil aval maybe b'damav beis elam. So you see clearly that changing the min is not a problem. You have to bring of an equivalent value. The reason why Loyavi B'dam of Ayel, Rashi says, is the cotton who Yoshimidai. It's much less than the original nether. Avol Yavi B'dam of Shmei. But whatever the case is, Alma Mina Lamina Shari. The fact that you're bringing Elam instead of a Shar is not a concern at all. For Rabbi Yosy, Lefi She'ein Bila Shema Mina. What does it mean, She'ein Bila? What do you mean, Ein Bila? Zok. Look, Rashi, it's because if you brought one shor, you're going to bring one mincha. So you oblige yourself to one minchas nesachim. But if you bring two elim, you're obliging yourself to two minchas nesachim. As Rashi says, the mincha that's for each individual aisle has to be brought individually. You can't mix it all together. Hilchach loibechzik yahuda nidroi the nodar. I'm sorry, it doesn't look like it's fulfilling his original nether, because his original nether was the nether midi de ba min chasai bichliyachot. The nether was on one shore that would have brought with it one minchas tazakim in one bikeli. But the Baal he now brought two elim v'kamaisi b'shnei kelim. Now he has to bring two separate menachos, one for each aisle. Because the lav mishuma menachos lo ich beslan. Akarbonos. Rebbe's objection seems only to be because of the problem with the menachos, but because of the animal itself that you changed from your original commitment, that doesn't seem to bother Rebbe. His whole problem is the menachos. So that's where his problem is. Shemamina, but this still brings our raya that changing minim is not a problem. Frank Gemara ihaki ma'ir yitrei afilu chad nami da benistavel rabbanon leishani lahu ben gadol lekatin. Why was the case was if you made a shor, you shouldn't bring an aisle. Even two of them shouldn't be. So you might hear your tray. Why dafka when there's a problem of two? Afilu chadami. The Rabbanon don't care. So why did the Rabbanon say layavi b'dam of ayil? Avol maybe b'dam of beis it shouldn't make a difference. In fact, there's a machlokes in the Rabbanon if there would be such an issue. So Rashi trade tonight the ikad is sphere that afilu b'nistav Osir Rabbanan begadol bebikoton lechatchila. So there's actually a machlokes according to the Rabbanan. Do you say you can't go smaller? Here it says you can't go smaller because it says in our case it says lo yavi b'dam of ayil aval maybe b'dam of beis elim. That's the Rabbanan. So you see, it's a kvadah not to go smaller, but the Rabbanan in the earlier Mishnah didn't have such an issue, and therefore we in fact have a machlokes in the Rabbanan Shita themselves. If you said a reizu, would there b'chalal be an issue of downgrading? Rabbi Oishel of Shein Bila. The reason why Rabbi didn't want to go from one animal to two animals is only because of a problem of the mincha, but the animal itself he wouldn't have had a problem. Taimedein Bila, Hayesh Bila Shari. How could you say that? Vatanan, Ayos Aylav in Istav, our Mishnah, Ratza Yavi Bedam of Keves, or keves ze oilov and nistav yavi bedam of oil the Rebbe Oiser. So here you see Rebbe Asers, which means it does bother Rebbe if you go to a different animal. In the brayso we just quoted, where it's only an issue of the mincha, we don't care what you do with the animal, as long as the mincha remains the same. But here you see Rebbe, in our Mishnah, you see Rebbe's considers it a problem merely to change animals. Zaktamar trei tenoi baliba the Rebbe. There's a machlokes in Rebbe too. So basically, the brayso that we just quoted here versus the Mishnah that we started with has a difference of opinion in what the Rabbanan hold, whether or not the Rabbanan hold you're allowed to go from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 1, from big to small, from small to big. And the same machlokes is in Rebbe. Would Rebbe have a problem with changing animals if it doesn't impact the mincha? Our brayso seems to say not, yet the Mishnah seems to say yes. Uvit taharin. What happens if you have an animal that didn't get a mum? So it means you said arei zu oila, and it's still good. It doesn't have a mum. So we're continuing on the brayso. Uvitahoyin egel ve'evi par kevis ve'evi ayil yotza. Zok Rashi uvitahoyin. Say for the brayso the shor za oila v'nistav. We're just continuing on the brayso that we started with. It says lo yavi bedam of ayil. Right? It said if the oil, Rabbi says if the shore became a balmum, you don't bring an aisle with it. But uvitahirim the loinafal bahamum, if it was an animal, you said I raise oila, and it didn't have a mum, then egel v'heavy par keves v'heavy aisle would be yotza. Why? Stomach karabon. That would be like a bundle hold that you could change. Zog to Gemara. Rotza yavi b'damav base. If you want, you could bring two smaller animals instead of one bigger animal. Amar Menachos bar Zvid Amarav Loi Shanu Elo de Amar Shor Ze Oila. This only works if he said Shor Ze Oila. Aval Amar Shor Ze Olai Oila. But if he said Harei Olai Oila, Shor Ze Olai Oila, that's already a commitment on him himself, and therefore it would be hukfa, which means hukfa achriyoy say alav laviyay oila achas v'lo shteilis. So if you said a reizu and it gets a mum, you sell it and you can buy two smaller ones with it. But if you said shor ze alai, that puts already a price on the makabel of the nether. Therefore, he has to bring exactly the same animal that he originally accepted upon himself. Frekemar, when you say shor ze alai, it's not harei alai, sure, it's shor ze alai. There's some zeh here. So maybe all he meant to say was, V'dilma alai laviyai kamar. Who said he was accepting upon himself a commitment to provide a shor? Should this shor become possible? Maybe all he meant to say is, shor zeh alai, I'm only being mechayiv this shor, but I'm also making a personal obligation that I will see to it that this animal gets taken to the Beis Hamikdash to be processed. If I say I raise oila, it's an oila. Come on, I leave. Let somebody else be busy with it to take it to the Beis Hamikdash. Shor Zalai maybe would indicate that I'm accepting full responsibility to get this to the Beis Hamikdash, but not to replace it if something goes wrong with it. So v'dilma alai laviyai kamar ela I itmar hachi itmar. Therefore, we have to change this member, and this is what he said. Amar Menachos bar Zvid Amarav lo shanu ela de Amar shor ze oila. Inami Amar shor ze alai oila. Either way, I'm not mechuyev to replace the same animal. If it should get a mum, I can go with smaller ones. Aval oimer shor zeh v'damav alai oila. If he says v'damav alai, so then hukva, that's really like saying harei alai oila. Okay, zog to Gemara weiter. Zogt the Gemara weiter. Zogt the Mishnah. Haimer echad mikivsei hektish. I have a whole flock of sheep. One of them is hektish. That's causing a problem. We don't know which one. Or the echad mishoyra hektish. V'hayuloi shnaim, and he has two. Hagadol shabehem hektish. He always means to give the biggest one. Someone said, one of my flock, I have in mind to give the best. A person is noisen be'ayin yofeh. Shloisha. What if he has three? Then it's beyin ishabehem. Now that means it's not be'ayin yofeh. So what is it? That's the middle. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Pirashti. I mean, beyin ishabehem hekish. Pirashti. If I say that I picked one specific animal in my flock, but I don't remember which one I picked. Pirashti ve'eni de mashi pirashti. Oi. I yash in the flock, and my father told me that one of them are kodesh. I don't know which one. Then Hagadol Shabbat Hektish. So this is going to be somewhat problematic because this seems to indicate that a person always wants to give the best of his flock. Yet a moment ago we said if there's three, it would be the Beini. So we're going to need explanation. Alma Maktish Be Yafa Maktish. The fact that it says Ha'imar Echad Mikivsha Hektish, it's the better one. So you see someone's Maktish Ben Yafa. But look to the very next case. Ema Seifa. Beinin Nisha Behen Hektish. Alma Maktish Ben Ra. Maktish. You see, when someone gives Hektish, he doesn't have in mind to give the best. He has in mind to give not the best. Yeah, but not everybody listens. Zok Gemara Amar Shmuel. Choishishin Afla Beinini. That's what it means. Really, we pass an Adam Ben Yafa. So therefore, when he said one of my animals are kodesh, it means the best. But just in case this guy maybe is not an Ein Yafa guy, we also are going to be matched the second one. Meaning, if you have three animals and you said one of my animals are kodesh, two of them become kodesh. One vadai and one safek. Why? The lagabikoton Ein Yafahi. The one in the middle is also Ein Yafa because it's not the bottom of the barrel; it's the middle of the barrel. And Kai took the bottom of the barrel, right? Frank the Gemara, Hechiyav, to what exactly do you do? Amar B'chibarav, one you bring as a carbon. The second one, you didn't know as a carbon, it's only misofik, hektish. So Mamte Noyat Shiyumam, you wait until it gets a mum, Umachalai the Kedusha say, Bigadol. And then you say that it's a suffix which one I was makdish. If the one in the middle that got a mum is not really choil, so it's not a problem. It's my money. And if it's the one that's kodesh and the other one is choil, so then I want to put the kedusha from this onto that. So regardless, the money from the middle one he can keep because he's able to deal with the suffix. Amar Nachman, Amar Rabbi Baravu, Lo shanu ela de Amar echad mishvarai hektish. One of my oxen are hektish. Aval Amar shor bishvari hektish. The ox amongst my ox is hektish. That's already a different utterance, and that has a connotation of hagodol shabahen hektish. Because he said Tura b'turo kamer, the ox among other ox, meaning it would be the best one. Frankamar Aini, that's all. The Omar of Huna, Omar Abchia, Mishmei Ula, Haimer Lechaveri, Bayis Bevesi Ani Marchalach. I'm selling you a house amongst my houses. The halach is Mar'eu Aliyah. I show him the aliyah. The aliyah is not the best. The best is the ground level. If there's an apartment on the second level, I get to push him off to that. Lav mishum de guriya. So you see, when someone says shor b'shvara, you don't mean the best because bayis bevesi doesn't mean the best. So what are you talking about? It doesn't mean you give him the attic. Doesn't Maria aliyah doesn't mean the attic. It means loy mu'ula shababatim. It means you have to give him the best one of your homes because you said Bayis bevesi. Meisve shor b'shvari hektish v'chein shor shel hektish shenis arav b'acher. What if you have a flock of animals and one shor got mixed in and I don't know which one it is? So the halach is hagodol shabehen hektish. The biggest one is hektish. V'chulan and all the rest yimachru l'tzarchei eilos. Since you don't know which one is the one that's hektish, you also have to sell the rest of them to people who are planning to bring a carbon with those animals. With the main chulum, but you have to keep the money. So what do you see from here? You see that it's not necessarily the best because you see there's a chash that it could be anyone in the herd. So Gemara Targuma Ashar Shal Hektish Shedis Arav Bachem. The only case from the two cases listed in this price that has the halacha, we have to be choshesh that the whole herd is kodesh. That's only when a shar of hekdesh got mixed in. But when you say shar b'shvarai, there the halacha is only the best one is hekdesh. Frank Gemara, how could you say that? It seems to equate these two cases. It says it says shar b'shvari v'chein shar shalekdesh. So doesn't that mean they have the same halacha? So no, Terguma Agadol. It means they share the halacha that the biggest one is the one that's hektish, but the halacha that all the rest are shveikis might only apply to a shor from hektish that got mixed in with others. Okay, we're running late, so we'll stop here and we'll be tomorrow. So tomorrow is Kuf Tes, and Kuf Yud is the last day, is Friday, but it only has an Amud Aleph, Kuf Yud. And Kuf Tes is still a pretty long daf. So we'll probably finish on Friday, and then we'll start Bez Hashem Chulun on Friday.